Hi, everyone. I'm Jamie Vaughn with Family Fiction's Christian Fiction Bookshelf podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Revell, a division of Baker Publishing Group. Today's guest is Joanna Davison Politano, who just released her newest book called The Lost Melody. Hi, Joanna. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me here, Jamie.
Absolutely. So, can you tell us a little bit about this book?
Sure. This book is a mix of mental health and music. So it's set in a Victorian asylum,
Mhm.
and I kind of delved into the beginnings of music therapy as a practice
Oh, wow.
back 50 or so years ago. So it was an interesting mix of different things.
Okay, so your lead protagonist is Vivian, and I would love to hear what inspired you to write her.
Well, when I set out with this asylum book in mind, I felt like I had painted myself into kind of a corner because it was a dark setting and a dark topic. So I needed to contrast it with something really beautiful.
Mhm.
And one of the most beautiful things I could think of that would have existed in Victorian England was music. So my heroine, Vivian, is a concert pianist, and she took it even further than that, and she just thinks in terms of music. It's
Mhm.
every sound that she hears, she kind of synthesizes into a song. The chaos she makes into harmony, a little bit like the movie August Rush.
Mhm.
And every person, every setting has sort of a background music that describes just the nuances of their personality and things like that. So that was a lot of fun to have her character um, kind of come into this really dark place and look through her music lens at
Mhm.
everything.
Oh, did you write
So
a
that's kind of,
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, that's kind of where she came from as a character, just the desire to put in something beautiful.
Oh, wow. So did you write any kind of music to go with it, like release a CD companion with the book? That would be awesome.
Oh, I wish I had that kind of talent. No, I created a playlist which I have posted on YouTube and my
Oh,
channel.
wow. Okay.
Um, and so it's just basically a collection of classical pieces, Liszt and Bach and things like that, anything she mentioned went in that playlist.
Oh,
And
wow.
I was listening to that playlist as I wrote it, and so it was very inspirational. And I definitely played a lot of piano, but nothing that I've never written music
Okay.
myself.
Gotcha. So, what kind of research goes into writing something about music theory and and the mental health issues that we're facing the characters?
Quite a bit of research. Honestly, I didn't know what had existed of music therapy back then, because it's not something that's been around in its current form, at least for, hundreds of years.
Mhm.
So I had to kind of, it was just burgeoning. They were just picking up on what they could do with music and how it affected chronic pain and things like that. So I found a man who had started this movement, and I read everything I could about him and everything, all his research and what he had done. I found a lot of pamphlets and news articles that he had published in the Victorian era. So I really got a taste for how people looked at it and what was going on, what research was going on.
Mhm.
So that was for the music therapy part. I also did a lot of research on current music therapy and the science behind it.
Uh-huh.
A lot of people think of it as almost like a bubble bath for the senses. It calms you down. Music will calm you down, but it's so much more than that. There's so much more interaction and brain activity and things like that. It's so fascinating. So there was that research and looking into asylums in the Victorian era and blowing through a lot of misconceptions about what was going on back then. And then also the mental health aspect. I have very close personal interaction with certain mental health conditions, but not all of them. So I really had to research and try to walk in the shoes more than anything of people that were experiencing things that I have never encountered before.
Mhm.
And I wanted to do justice to their struggle. I didn't want to make light of it. So I was very careful to talk to a lot of people and read a lot of things and really pray about it and just try to dive into the heart of things.
So, what are your underlying themes for the book?
Well, one of the main themes is light versus darkness. I really wrestled with how dark this book was. I write what's considered Gothic fiction, but I really don't go that dark. So this was difficult for me to write a book that was set in a really dark and kind of discouraging place. So I fought it for a long time and tried to lighten it up. And I really felt God sort of inviting me into more of a contrast, because you can see the light. It's like, walking with a flashlight in daylight, you don't see it. But when you turn the lights out, there it is.
Right.
So I had to be okay with some darker parts so that the light that God really wanted to bring out would stand out.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the themes. And then the other one is, we all kind of find ourselves in circumstances of other people's making, or, just life circumstances that we never would have chosen.
Mm-hmm.
Dreams get derailed, plans change. We find ourselves saddled with responsibilities we didn't want, just things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But there's so much freedom within those constraints. Rather than leaving and finding our perfect happiness, there's only so much you can lock up about our personality and who we are. So even if we're in an asylum or in a prison, there's so much freedom being in Christ,
Mm-hmm.
no matter what the circumstance. So I talked a little bit about Paul being under house arrest, and he was still Paul. He was
Right.
still writing and encouraging and preaching Christ. So my heroine had to really wrestle with giving up what she had in mind for her life and come to grips with where she was instead, and take who she was and just, instead of just surviving what she was doing, like really living out who she was in this setting.
Okay.
So those were my main themes.
What is your writing process like? Are you someone who kind of lets the story come as you're writing, or you outline that and kind of plan out every little detail, or somewhere in the middle?
I am fully not a plotter.
Okay.
I've tried so hard to plot books. I think it was my fourth book. I spent months on an outline, and I really just fleshed it out and thought about it and prayed about it and poured a lot into it. And I had to scrap the whole thing because it didn't work after the first chapter. It's harder to write without an outline. There's a lot more rewriting and a lot of, I don't know where I'm going, a lot of deleting.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, I'm not ever happy with the way the story goes otherwise. I just have to let it unfold organically. And I think God doesn't let us get away with doing something that's easy.
Mm-hmm.
He, will invite us into something that's maybe a little more challenging, result a little bit more dependent on him as well.
Yeah.
So I kind of, it's a wrestling match a little bit with an empty page sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
but the stories unfold organically and they just end up being better as a result.
Okay, great. So what's next for you?
Coming up next, not anytime too soon, but in the upcoming year and a half, I think, from now, there will be a book on the silent movie era. And so
Okay.
like the early Edwardian period, back before they were like feature length, like, 3-minute little film clips. And after that, I have kind of a book about gadgety inventions and things like that in this manor house, and the girl who inherits all of this.
Okay. That sounds cool. So, everyone, if you like this chapter of the Christian Fiction Bookshelf podcast, make sure to hit subscribe below. And Joanna, thank you so much for stopping by and seeing us today and talking to us about The Lost Melody. And everyone, go out and get it wherever you buy books. Buy local if you can, but wherever is fine. Have a great day.